Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 133. The Departed. Xiang Shu, however, didn't seem to have listened to Chen Xing's explanation. He instead said, mostly to himself, "So, as of now, we've already entered Ipiter's final year in your body." He took a glance at Chen Xing before continuing, "We're already in that lost year. The one inside our dream." Chen Xing calmly answered him, "Yes." Xiang Shu felt a little vexed. "I used to think that, with the chakra of heaven and earth mended to its established flow, you should have been safe during this year, but this way, with the time limit for casting the sword drawing nearer, it won't do. This needs to be fixed." "What?" Chen Xing was flabbergasted. "I don't understand. Wait." "Xiang Shu, explain it to me." Xiang Shu was about to get up, but Chen Xing grabbed a hold of his hand and asked, "You have discussed the plan with Xian, right?" Tilting his head, Xiang Shu looked at Chen Xing, eyes filled with complex emotions. But Chen Xing refused to let him go. He pulled him back into the couch and, straddling him, he hugged his neck as he threatened in a low voice, "Explain it to me." A trace of anxiety came across Xiang Shu's face. Now face to face, Chen Xing lowered his head and kissed Xiang Shu before looking at him again in all earnestness. "If not, I will ruin your dual cultivation." Chen Xing smiled. "I don't believe you're capable of controlling yourself." "Fine." Although Xiang Shu answered in a serious manner, his reaction was already poking against Chen Xing. "This is the plan that I've discussed with Xian, Feng Qianjun and Tuobayan," Xiang Shu said, a frown on his face. "I just didn't inform you about it because if your attitude toward everything changes even the slightest bit after knowing the outcome, we won't be able to fool Chu. It may even make all of our efforts go to waste." "Then you'd better stop saying anything," Chen Xing immediately said. "I'll completely listen to you." Xiang Shu was slightly caught off guard. He buried his head on the body before him and tightly hugged Chen Xing. Chen Xing's breath hitched. It was done with so much force he practically felt his insides were being squeezed. "You trust me?" Xiang Shu muttered, only realizing right afterward what a stupid question he had asked. "Isn't that a given?" Chen Xing was between laughter and tears. He removed his hands from Xiang Shu's neck and stood up. "Don't be angry. It was me who rambled nonsense," Xiang Shu immediately said. Xing Xing." Chen Xing blushed as he said, "I'm not angry. It's just, I almost." "Almost what?" asked Xiang Shu. "Almost wasn't good anymore." Chen Xing was driven mad. "You held me too tightly, La." Xiang Shu covered his forehead with one hand. He wanted to do the thing, but since it wasn't the time yet, he could only endure it. With snowstorms being exceptionally heavy during the past few days, Jiankang was faced with its heaviest snowfall in 50 years. Chen Xing recalled that it hadn't been this cold the first time he had visited. But then again, they were already at the point where the reincarnation cycle began anew, a completely new year where events from before had all passed. After autumn, their former advantage of having the enemy's movement in the palm of their hand no longer existed. The only thing they could use as a reference was the dream that Yuyan Kun had let them experience. There was no suggestion of what they ought to do next, so they could only rely on themselves. Chen Xing, wrapped in thick robes, attentively watched his surroundings as he recalled that missing year inside the dream. The world had also been cold like this. It was gloomy, and everything was shrouded in a layer of dusky fog. The exorcists gathered on the foot of Mount Namping in Chibi on the day before winter solstice, and Xian, braving the wind and snow, led them up the mountain. At the peak, Wenqie and Xin Yuanping were talking in a low voice as they sat on a lump of rock, the latter's palms covering Wenqie's hands to keep him warm. Both of their eyes had strangely turned ice blue, looking as if they were embedded with gems. Chen Xing was slightly surprised at the sight and observed them for a while. Xin Yuanping asked, "Is that everyone?" Chen Xing used the heart lamp to illuminate the mountain peak. Night fell as the period approached, and besides the exorcists, 2 drought fiend kings had also come, Sima Wei and the Ghost King. The mana trail appeared on the ground. After meditating for a while, Xin Yuan Ping said, "Hold on, let's wait until the period arrives before we begin." Wen Che said, "You must be swift, we only have half a shishan to interrogate Shi Hai. Separating the Hun for Chen Xing will take another half a shishan, and if we go over, we will need to wait for another year." Everyone nodded. Tuoba Yan said, "What if, after we've summoned Wang Zi from inside the Luahun bell, he refuses to tell the truth?" "No," Chen Xing explained to Tuoba Yan, "we have a choice in this. There isn't any need for us to question all of his 3 Hun at once. Otherwise, following his previous conduct, there'd be no way he'd tell us the details, he may even deceive us." Xian nodded. Among the 3 Hun, the Heaven Hun is the self part, the Earth Hun holds the memories, while the Human Hun is the one carrying love, hatred, and all kinds of feelings. Wang Zi hated us and the human race in general, even if we don't know what it was he hated about all that. In a while, we will separate the 3rd Hun containing strong emotions using this array, leaving only his self and the memories he had during his life. Tuoba Yan went in understanding. With the resentment removed from Wang Zi's soul, everyone would be able to calmly discuss things over with him. Everyone dispersed for now. Chen Xing sat together with Xiangshu. The night being this cold reminded Chen Xing of that night they had left Karasha for the Xingluo Tower, though he hadn't felt chilled to the bone then, as the phoenix Chongming had been by their side. The snow tonight hadn't stopped falling at all, it covered almost the entire array. The boundless snow dyed the whole world white, reflecting the gleam of the snowy night. All that could be seen between heaven and earth was only a vast expanse of pure whiteness that somehow gave a feeling of purity. Xiangshu rubbed Chen Xing's hands to warm them up. As he held his hands, he looked at him in the eyes. "After tonight," Xiangshu began, "your heart lamp may or may not be gone." Chen Xing replied, voice soft, "I'm slightly reluctant to part with it, you know." He smiled before continuing, "I'm very thankful for it. It's only because I have this, that we were able to meet each other." Xiangshu's eyebrows and head were all covered with snow. The 2 of them sat under a tree, just like the day they had pledged their love in Chi Li Chuan. "Even if you didn't meet me," Xiangshu said, "you would have still found someone who dearly loved you, who would accompany you in a lifetime of happiness." "If I didn't meet you," Chen Xing softly replied, "how could I regard it as happiness?" Xiangshu seemed to have thought of lowering his head and giving Chen Xing a kiss on the lips, though he suddenly changed his mind after he looked at Chen Xing's eyes. He instead hugged him and, slightly straightening his body, landed a kiss on his forehead. Leaning against Xiangshu's body, Chen Xing could hear his heartbeat. Their souls were igniting together in the snowy night, and Chen Xing could feel everything Xiangshu wanted to say. The kiss imprinted on his forehead, the implication that they would go hand in life and in death. "Let's begin." Wen Che stood up. "It's time." The wintry night of winter solstice, the night when the yin qi was at its peak. In this night, the power of earth veins, after passing through a year's worth of reincarnation cycle, would suppress the power of the heaven veins. It would lead to the circulation of heaven and earth veins, and 6 months later, during the summer solstice, the heaven veins would regain their peak strength. At this moment, with the array power, the winding earth veins began to converge toward Mount Namping, glowing a faint light in the process. The Luahun bell, suspended in the air in the center of the soul-separating array, quickly reacted in response, its body humming as the souls confined inside were fighting to escape their imprisonment. Together with Xiangshu, Chen Xing walked into the array and reached out to the Luahun bell. Xiangshu put a hand on his hip as he stood neither too far nor too close behind Chen Xing. Standing guard in each main direction of the array were Xian, Tuoba Yan, Feng Qianjun and Xiao Shan. The Ghost King and Sima Wei stood on the yin side, while Xin Yuanping and Wen Che were on the yang side. Chen Xing was a little nervous. I'm going to purify the Luohun bell. Go on, Xiang Shu said. No need to be anxious. The heart lamp is still inside you. Worst comes to worst, we'll just have to capture him again. As Xin Yuanping began chanting the spell, he seemed to have completely changed into a different person. With a deep voice, he commanded, "Exorcists, heed the order. Guard the array. Great exorcist, please open the soul-binding array." Dong Chen Xing shook the Luohun bell. The Luohun bell loudly echoed, and soon a strong light burst forth from within. The first to rush out of the bell was the phantom soul of a Yao beast. It immediately sent out a deafening roar. Chen Xing. He had activated the Luohun bell before, and at that time, Chen Xing had managed to release the souls of hundreds of thousands of people, transforming them into butterflies before returning to their own bodies. However, that had been during the era of the silence of all magic. He had been forcefully using the heart lamp's power and only had limited mana. As such, the majority of powerful souls inside the bell hadn't gotten released. But now, with an abundance of spiritual qi in the world, the Luohun bell unexpectedly released a great Yao whose formidable power could destroy heaven and earth. Fortunately, that Yao's soul could no longer harm the world, and it shot toward the sky as soon as it left the bell. Chen Xing, what is that? Don't mind it. Go on. Xiang Shu shouted. Following the vibration, just like a tide, the souls of many Yao sealed inside the Luohun bell from ages ago poured out one after another with a loud rumble. Xin Yuanping, who had long expected this, shouted, "Let them go." Countless malevolent souls in bird, beast, or even human shapes moved all over the place before finally shooting themselves into the sky, and Chen Xing nearly lost control of the Luohun bell. At this moment, Xiang Shu decisively put his hands over Chen Xing's and ignited all of the mana contained in his body. Brilliant light bloomed forth, turning them into a blazing light so bright it covered the entire sky. "I'm free." A gentle voice of a woman sounded. Amidst the ocean of light, Xiang Shu suddenly opened his eyes wide. "Leave." Xin Yuanping said. "Dust to dust, ashes to ashes. The deceased should no longer yearn for the mundane world, for their souls belong to the horizon, to the eternal cycle of reincarnation." "Wait." Xiang Shu shouted. "Stop." This made them pause. Chen Xing made a quick decision and commanded, "Stop the spell. Don't ask, just listen to me." They ceased casting the spell. Wen Che was stumped, but realizing there wasn't enough time to give it another thought, he pressed his hands to the ground. As he stopped directing the power to forcefully send the souls off to the heaven veins, Xin Yuanping asked in surprise, "Who's that?" As the heart lamp's brilliance dimmed, the light gathered to the center of the array. With a loud rumble it formed a shape of a female martial god glowing all over. "Xiang Yuyan? Why would?" Chen Xing suddenly recalled the scene he had seen in Zhang Liu's memory. Wang Zi had damaged the ancient tide array when it was being activated, before finally using the Luohun bell to collect away Xiang Yuyan's previous memories. "Who are you?" Xiang Yuyan looked at Xiang Shu, puzzled. Xiang Shu let go of Chen Xing and walked toward her in disbelief. It wasn't that they hadn't seen memories of Xiang Yuyan before. In fact, Feng Qianjun, Xiao Shan, and the others had also entered the world fragment of Kuiji just before. It was just, meeting face to face with his mother's soul. This was actually the first, the only time Xiang Shu had experienced it after her death. "Kong-er," Xiang Shu slowly said. "Mom, I'm Kong-er." Chen Xing didn't remind Xiang Shu that the Xiang Yuyan inside the Luohun bell didn't have the memories following her time travel nor the memories related to giving birth to Xiang Shu. Her soul being taken in by the bell, after all, had happened before she left. The one before them right now was still the young lady of Kuiji's Xiang family, the wielder of Akala Blade. "Kong-er." Xiang Yuyan didn't understand. That is, who? Why are you acting so familiar? I'm your child from the future. Xiangshu was choked with emotion. Mom, I'm Shulakong. Hearing that, Xiang Yuyan smiled and stretched her hand out to caress Xiangshu's face. Xiangshu reached out, but a soul she was, and his hand just passed through her. Your father must be a very handsome man, Xiang Yuyan said, a smile filling her eyes. He's a big bearded man, Xiangshu supplied. Everyone couldn't help but laugh at that remark. There was a hint of smile in Xiangshu's eyes. Chen Xing, however, teared up instead. Xiang Yuyan's smile looked very similar to Xiangshu. They both carried an attractive and elegant aura. Mom, said Xiangshu again, this is Xing. As he said so, Xiangshu turned around and motioned for Chen Xing to come to him. Chen Xing, in the end, couldn't contain himself. Overwhelmed with emotions, he stepped towards Xiang Yuyan. She slightly raised her head to look at Chen Xing before returning her gaze to Xiangshu. N. Xiang Yuyan smiled gently. Kong Xing be well. Everyone was still quietly watching the scene when a strand of black chi bloomed out of Xiangshu and Chen Xing's shadows. It continued to rise, traveling the surface and leaving the array. Xian signaled to Xin Yuanping, making everyone take notice of the shadow, and Feng Qianjun shouted, Wang Zi. The shadow, caught in the act, immediately took off to the sky. When Che sneered, come back here. The exorcists simultaneously chanted a spell, their hands grasping the sky. The runes surrounding the array on the ground sky. Transforming into grappling hooks, the runes shot up and coiled around Wang Zi's. Escaping 3 hun, forcefully dragging him back to the ground. Wang Zi wailed in anguish. Chen Xing, at this time, finally gained first-hand knowledge of the mighty soul-binding array. It actually managed to firmly put Wang Zi in place and left him unable to struggle against it. While it's true that the bond between mother and child is deep, Wang Zi taunted, it's a pity that the Xiang Yuyan in front of you has no idea who you are. Shi hai. Xiang Yuyan remembered Wang Zi very clearly, however. What did you do to Lu Ji? Wang Zi, put aside your hatred for the time being, let's have a good talk. Xian made a gesture with his hand after saying so, and all the exorcists shouted in unison, separate. Xin Yuanping took rein of the hook as the light of the array on the ground rotated at full speed. Everyone pulled in at the same time, causing Wang Zi, who was unable to bear the pain, to scream in agony. And so, out of his 3 hun, the somber 3rd hun that was already tangled up with resentment and unreconciled was forcefully separated from him. Xin Yuanping immediately gathered the soul, which was none other than Wang Zi's human hun containing his emotions, and locked it on the yin side of the soul-binding array. The black chi surrounding Wang Zi completely dissipated once that hun was separated from his body. Right now, he appeared to emit a glimmer of light similar to Xiang Yuyan's 2 hun body. Out of all sights he witnessed in his life, this was truly the most peculiar one. Chen Xing had never expected he would one day be able to peek into the mystery of the origin of the world. Shi hai. Xiang Yuyan muttered. Wang Zi was separated into 2. 1 hun detained on the yin side of the array while the new body was standing on the yang side. Finally, I'm free from everything. Wang Zi looked up, having become a whole different person. For thousands of years I have suffered and been tormented underground. After being awakened by the god of weapons, I sank into an endless nightmare, but today, everything will finally come to an end. Thank you. Hearing this, Chen Xing immediately knew that they had successfully pulled it off. This Wang Zi knew who he was and retained his memories, but the hatred in his soul was non-existent, instead replaced by tranquility. You caused Lu Ji's death. Xiang Yuyan, however, didn't wait for the others to open their mouths to ask. She stepped forward, moving away from Xiangshu and Chen Xing. Xiangshu was about to inquire, but Chen Xing shook his head, motioning for him not to interrupt. Yes, Wang Zi calmly answered. He tried, futilely, to return to 3,000 years in the past to prevent all of this from happening. That in itself was violating cause and effect, so how could he possibly succeed? Xiang Yuyan, did you succeed then? Wang Zi faintly smiled before turning to face the rest of the people. No, he spoke again. Fate is like a chain that is linked in such a mysterious way. The seeds of retribution that I planted have at last sprouted within me. Presumably, what awaits me is also a kind of never-ending punishment that will last until the divine land itself ceases to exist. Xiang Yuyan's voice carried no resentment either. The corners of her mouth slightly hooked as she asked, if you had known how that would end up, would you have done it in the first place? That scene was very odd. The original goal of the exorcists was to pass judgment on the bodiless Wang Zi, and they hadn't expected that the situation in the end would turn into a soul interrogating another soul. The Akala blade has already been refined by the god of weapons, Wang Zi said darkly. You have no more chances. Xiang Yuyan's eyes were filled with astonishment, and she turned to look at the rest of them. Xiang Shu nodded. That's right, Mom. The divine weapon that has been passed down through our family has fallen into Chu's hands. Xiang Yuyan studied Wang Zi's soul, before shaking her head. Shihai, you do not understand. The Akala blade is merely a worldly tool, and the copper of Mount Shao simply bears its weight. Does the god of weapons still not understand to this day, in the battle of Bankan, why he lost to the Xian Yuan? Yuyan, what exactly are you trying to say? Wang Zi asked earnestly. In the end, didn't you also understand that a world where the land is thriving, the people living on it are flourishing, and everything is peaceful and happy, is not the divine land that you and I want? The person who didn't understand that was Zhang Lu. The group of exorcists listened silently to this. This time, it was Chen Xing's turn to be speechless, but in the end, he did not interrupt Wang Zi, instead allowing him to continue speaking. Xian Yuan is the ancestor of all humans, Wang Zi said solemnly, glancing over the group of exorcists. The blood of the Xian Yuan has granted you all kindness, trust, bravery, so on and so forth, things that you think are beautiful and good. The god of weapons, Shu, has also passed his blood onto you, and the blood of Shu grants you impulsiveness, a lust for battle and resentment, hatred and regret. But without the devil god's blood, this divine land would lose carnage and destruction. The world would be completely at peace, and humans would not desire or want for anything. How will they then push the wheel of innovation, generation by generation, inexorably forward? You all see the devil god's blood as a curse upon this divine land, but in my eyes, everything in this world is in balance. Yin and yang complements each other, and likewise, the devil god's blood and the blood of the Xian Yuan have become parts of a whole that cannot be separated. From the bloody soil springs forth all life, Wang Zi murmured. The god of weapons turned his third hun into the seed of Mara, which takes the resentment in the human realm as sustenance to turn him into Mara. He reincarnates once every millennium, and is reborn onto this earth. That is the regret that he has held onto after losing at Bankan, but it has also unexpectedly become an important step in the cleansing of the divine and earthly veins. And as he spoke, Wang Zi put his hands behind his back, turned to Chen Xing, and smiled gently. They all say that the heart lamp's light shines through the heavens and the earth, but if there was no night in the world, where would the need for light come from? If the world was pitch black, what difference is there from being so bright white that nothing can be seen at all? Chen Xing replied solemnly, but what you have done has long since surpassed that. You should have stopped once you stopped Zhang Lu and returned to 3,000 years ago. After that, how many innocent lives did you end? Xian added solemnly, that's right, Wang Zi. I admit that your words are logical, but as of today, the actions that you have taken are more than enough to plunge the divine land into endless darkness. Since you have suffered for thousands of years, Why do you see the need to impose that upon the living beings of this world as well? Wang Zi shook his head and sighed. Juniors, this so-called darkness does not have a boundary simply because you wish it to have one. The god of weapons revival may look coincidental, but is actually inevitable. After the Battle of Bonkan, he has already waited for thousands of years. His blood has seeped into the land, and from it have sprung forth humans. The slaughter that the humans perpetuate has caused their blood to seep back into the earth, feeding the god of weapons, causing him to slowly awaken down below. This is a cycle that feeds back into itself. The one who woke him was not I, Wang Zi said, but rather yourselves. The origin of all of this, from the moment that he took all living things as his physical shell to absorb the nutrients within, has long since been destined to be. Dipamkara and Akalanatha, have they not also left you a sword that can cut him down? It is a pity that you all are still under the god of weapons control, and he has glimpsed your, including you, Yuyan, and Zhonglu, the Dinghai Pearl, the wielder of the heart lamp, regrets and hatred that every living being in this mortal world does not wish to part with deep in their hearts. You all originally thought that you had changed everything and set your lives on a different path, but what you are woefully ignorant of is that you have lost the chance to reseal him. Pity shone from Wang Zi's eyes, and he shook his head. Xiang Yuyan, however, replied solemnly, this is not something you have to worry over, Shi Hai. As long as he is alive, my child will personally bring an end to all of this. I believe that there will come a day when they are able to do so. It was finally at this moment that Xin Yuanping spoke. Shi Hai, I no longer know how to punish you, because the divine land of today was created solely by you. You are the cause of such evil fruit, and no matter how I think about it, there is no other option than to banish your Hunpo to the end of the northern lands, binding them deep in the Karasha mountains, under the ground where no daylight will reach. Wen Che continued, in the eternal passage of time, you will have no way to leave the realm of the humans and return to the cycles of reincarnation, you will never be freed. Eternity, that flavor of loneliness, is one that I imagine you have tasted before. Wang Zi smiled. Why is that? Because of what I've done. Wang Zi turned his pity-filled gaze to the other side of the array, to that black humanoid silhouette bound by talismans. His third Hun was currently trembling amidst that black shadow. I will accept it wholly, with no objections, Wang Zi said calmly in the end. But sometimes, when I think about it in detail, at some moments in time, I still probably do not wish for the god of weapons to be revived. Sometimes, I even wish to replace him and become that changing variable. What? Chen Xing's expression changed. Wang Zi said slowly, even if the god of weapons were to revive now, he is still missing his third Hun, the seed of Mara that is hiding in the human realm. It's truly curious, I have never found out what happened to it in the end. But as long as there is ample resentment in the human realm, when it reaches a certain level, Wang Zi murmured, it will become the catalyst to another devil seed, try uncontrollably to escape, and once again fall prey to the god of weapons' absorption. Do not forget, since Chu lacks his third Hun, he no longer has the desire to destroy the world, he said. It is also exactly because of that you all were able to linger on with your last breath. If his three Hun were all gathered, I imagine that things would no longer be how they are currently. Now that I think about it, I used the Tianluo fan to take away and control resentment, probably because deep in my heart, I am still unwilling to destroy this divine land. He continued absent-mindedly, after all, I simply wished to return and look at her once more from afar, one glance would be enough. Wang Zi studied Xiang Yuyan, lifting a hand, as if he wanted to place it on Xiang Yuyan's cheek. He murmured, the day that I first caught a glimpse of you, you reminded me of a Yao, It's truly a pity that thousands of years later, the seas have become mulberry fields, and though the land has not changed, the people have long since disappeared. Keenly, Chen Xing sensed a different emotion in Wang Zi's words. When he thought back through the memories that Zhonglu had left behind in the north, one of the things they had learned was that when Xiang Yuyan was small, she had drunk a drop of devil god's blood that Wang Zi had provided. What did that mean? Wang Zi had already seen Xiangshu's mother when she was young? Because she was the inheritor of the Akala blade? Chen Xing didn't dare to think deeply about it. After all, this was a matter that involved Xiangshu's family. But you still have a chance, Xian finally spoke. If you are willing to tell us about Chu's preparations, as well as any chances we'll have, we will. And saying this, everyone turned to look at Chen Xing. This was something they had discussed beforehand. They would rather completely purify Wang Zi than bury him in Karasha as a punishment. Forcing him to suffer for all eternity was trivial, but what if one day, someone carelessly dug him up? That would be a great disaster indeed. To defeat this kind of person, there was no other choice but to end him completely. That was the most important point in resolving this issue. Chen Xing said, I will purify you, and send you back into the cycles. Wang Zi, however, said, I willingly accept my punishment. There isn't anything to exchange here, but I don't have any ideas to offer you all either. Ever since the god of weapons guessed that the Dinghai pearl broke, ever since the revival of all magic, he has begun to suspect me. I am no longer as I was before, Wang Zi said, helping him plan for matters both trivial and great. After all these spiders' threads and horses' tracks have shown that I once failed. Chen Xing sensed it too. After they disrupted their destinies and restarted from the beginning, the things that Wang Zi had done noticeably lessened. Most of the time, he was busy with reviving the Drought Fiend Kings, and in the end, in a last-ditch attempt, he came to attack the exorcism department. Who does he rely on now? Xiangshu frowned. Wang Zi replied calmly, he no longer trusts us humans, and has put the power of his second Hun into the earth veins. As of now, his consciousness spreads out along those feelers and has become one with the divine and earthly veins. All he needs is resentment, a great deal of resentment, and he will be able to control the human realm. Of course, there will always be resentment, and he is able to wait. Chen Xing recalled the moment he and Xiangshu had run into Chu while they were out at sea, as well as when Chu had appeared in the sky over Karasha when Wang Zi was attacking the exorcism department. Then he'll be even harder to fight, Chen Xing frowned. Wang Zi suddenly remembered something, and he said, however, he is not completely without weaknesses, because after all, to him, what's most important is that he finds his third Hun. Reviving preemptively, in a state where he is missing the seed of Mara, is the inferior option, as he will not be able to call upon his full power. But then again, this third Hun is hiding somewhere even I don't know. Supposedly, a great Yaogwai took it away. Naturally, Chen Xing knew, Kong Xian had hidden himself in dreams, but he didn't say that. Purify him ba, Xiangshu said. Chen Xing nodded. From this moment on, the world will no longer have you in it. Wang Zi was a little taken aback by this. He fell silent for a moment, before he nodded slightly. The exorcists all pulled their spells back and stood down. Xin Yuan Ping undid the soul-binding spell. As soon as Wang Zi's resentful third Hun was freed, it rushed towards his other two souls. Chen Xing's hand, however, glowed with a brilliant light, and thousands of threads of light wrapped around him in that instant. His third Hun began to roar wildly. Chen Xing ignited the talisman, shouting, break. There was a huge boom. The moment the talisman was slapped down on Wang Zi, a sea of light spread out from that point, turning into the land of the distant past, filled with spring. That time was already very, very long ago. Chen Xing saw a completely foreign man. He was tall, strong, and handsome, and wore an outfit from the Shang dynasty, his shoulders and back bare, with a gold necklace draped around his neck. He was walking across the riverbank covered in blooming flowers. A girl with a snake's tail and a human body was currently bathing herself in the river, under the care of many of her attendants. She actually looked a little bit like Xiang Yuyan. The Sea River, Wen Chei's voice said. Everyone around the array was seeing the distant memories that Wang Zi had buried deep in the passage of time. It's just by those two trees, Xiang Shu said to Chen Xing. Do you remember them? We've even gone there before. End chapter.